What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. Today I wanted to challenge myself in Love Cup by using Mr. Mime. This Pokemon is honestly in a very interesting spot. It has one of the best fast moves in the entire game, but because it is hindered by its charge moves being only nuke attacks, it doesn't have a bait attack at all. It is a little bit slow to reaching charge moves, and as a squishy Pokemon, it does leave a little bit to be desired. With that said, I did want to challenge myself and see if we could go positive with it today. Yesterday we tried out Wugtrio, and it actually went a little bit better than I would have thought. We went 12, 12, and 1 on the day with that Pokemon, so let's see what Mr. Mime can do. Alright, let's get right on into a Mr. Mime in the lead up against a Lickilicky. This is honestly a very neutral matchup, but we have to keep in mind Lickilicky does often have Shadow Ball in this meta, which would one-shot us potentially. With that said, before an Earthquake or a Shadow Ball will be reached, we can outpace to a Psychic, and Psywave is adding up a little bit over time here. Psychic going to be thrown, and unfortunately, because it is such a weak charge move, it's not going to be able to one-shot them or anything. With that said, we do try to catch a move. It doesn't quite work out, but our opponent still opts to throw energy against our Miltank anyway. It's going to be an Earthquake. It does a massive amount of damage, but that's a lot of energy drained away from that Lickilicky. In comes a Medicham to farm down our Miltank, but it looks like they're actually on Psycho Cut, which means a lot less fast move pressure, a lot more charge move pressure. Miltank is going to be able to at least put in a little bit of work here. Our opponent is overfarming even more energy right now. Psycho Cut is going to be able to put them at a dynamic crunch very soon here, maybe even at the back-to-back. Thunderbolt number 2, though, ends up landing, and our opponent is going to throw a charge move of their own. I'm going to shield this up. I know that the fast moves aren't doing too much to us here. Miltank should be in a good spot as long as I can save it, and then I'm going to swap into our Mr. Mime. The switch clocks are a little bit decent this game, so if I can force energy from this Medicham into our Mr. Mime, it's going to do almost nothing to us. In comes a Dynamic Punch. It doesn't do anything because both Fairy and Psychic resist that attack. I'm going to no-shield. I think a Body Slam barely does not knock us out here. Mr. Mime able to hang on, reach a Shadow Ball, or a Psychic rather. Shadow Ball would be a crazy move to throw against a normal type, but Psychic is going to be thrown. It will knock out if it goes through. Our opponent does let it through, and we see that final Pokemon. It's exactly what we needed to see. A Pokemon that Alomomola has a ton of play into. We can just Waterfall this all the way down. We still have our Miltank in the backline as well. We're going to shield up the first attack, expecting a Shadow Ball to come through. Our opponent throwing the Shadow Ball as we thought, and now we can farm them all the way down, likely before another charge move is even going to be reached. They do throw a Disarming Voice, it looks like, so not a Shadow Ball, but it will chip us down a little bit. Our opponent is going to have to try their best with their final Pokemon to finish us off, but Medicham is at 1 HP. 1 Waterfall is more than enough to knock them out there. Skeledirge, very low on HP. They didn't use a single shield that game. GG's to them. Next matchup, Ariados up against Mr. Mime. This is a matchup that I really wish was a little bit better for Mr. Mime. We are so slow to getting to these charge moves, and because they have super effective Poison Sting against us, even though we're doing super effective damage against them, this matchup is actually pretty bad. In comes a lunge. We're going to get our attack lowered as well. Our opponent swapping into a Lickilicky. I don't have a hard answer to this, so I'm going to go for a chip and dip, go for the Psychic after some Psywave energy generation, and see what our opponent is going to do. Psychic does end up landing. Our opponent does not throw the Shadow Ball. I was trying to catch the attack. Unfortunately, it did not end up coming through. Our opponent, though, still likely going to throw a Body Slam against us here. Body Slam does a little bit of damage. It doesn't do a lot, but over time, that will start adding up. But Mr. Mime has energy. We are down shields. Ariados in the backline has a bit of energy on it as well. We'll have to see how our opponent wants to play out this game. Earthquake does actually come through, so no Shadow Ball from this Lickilicky. That's interesting. I'm going to go for Thunderbolt. I know it's going to knock out at this point. Body Slam might not be enough to KO this Lickilicky, and down they go before they can reach another Body Slam. Our opponent likely going to bring in, oh, I guess it's going to be the Alomomola actually here. It's going to be their final Pokemon this game. I'm going to go for a Body Slam bait and see if we can draw a shield with this move. Our opponent has a big decision to make. Where do they want to invest their shields? They actually go for a shield with a Alomomola, and I'm going to go for a Body Slam against this Pokemon and see if we can draw another shield. But they were very precise on their counts. They knew I was not quite at the move just yet. In comes the Ariados, and in comes our Mr. Mime. We have reset our debuff here. As long as I can knock out this Ariados, I think we're going to be in a good spot against that Alomomola in the backline. Psychic does end up drawing the shield here, but they're going to go for an attack here themselves. If this is a lunge, our Psywaves are going to do a lot less damage, but I have to hope I can farm them down before they farm us down here. Unfortunately, the Poison Sting's just barely able to give us the full farm down here for the Ariados. They have a Trailblaze or a lunge loaded. At that point, not much I could do. Mr. Mime, if it had a cheaper charge move, he could have won that one, but unfortunately just not enough in the tank. Next matchup is Shadow Scizor up against our Mr. Mime. Honestly, one of the worst leads you could possibly see here. I do say swap our Miltank. Hopefully they don't have a hard answer to us, and it does not look like they do. They're staying in for just a second here, throwing either a Night Slash or an X-Scissor into us. Looks like that was just a Night Slash. Not going to do too much damage, but then they can sponge energy on their Lickilicky. I'm going to go for Thunderbolt. It's a very efficient charge attack. Body Slam is not the best charge attack in the game ever since that Body Slam damage nerf, so I'm going to go for the Thunderbolts here, doing a lot more raw damage to them and trying to KO this Lickilicky as much as we can. In comes yet another charge move, Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt is going to be able to chip them down nearly into the red. This is basically range where Body Slam could knock them out here, but our opponent might knock us out before we can reach it. Body Slam from our opponent comes through. Our opponent gets a full farm down right before my next Body Slam, unfortunately, which means there is so much energy left over on this Lickilicky. I don't know how we can win this game. I'm going to try to sidewave this down. I know even a Shadow Ball doesn't one-shot us from full HP, so I can at least drain energy here, maybe invest all into our Alomomola and try to win the game that way, but let's see what's going to happen. They did Shadow Ball us with that first move, likely a Body Slam coming through. At the very least, they have no more energy left over, so we can farm this down with our Alomomola and see how they want to play this game out. What do they bring in? They still have that Shadow Scizor with quite a bit of HP. I know, though, if they bring this in, either this means that they're weak to our Alomomola in the backline, or they just have a Pokemon that's pretty neutral into us and they want to get some chip damage. I have to hope that they're weak, but no, they are not. It's their own Alomomola. We end up losing that one. GG's to our opponent. Next matchup, Mr. Mime up against a Scrafty. Honestly, a very interesting lead matchup here. We know that Scrafty has no fast food pressure, but Mr. Mime is kind of squishy, so a foul play will end up doing quite a bit of damage to us, and we only have resisted damage to throw against them. We might be a Fairy-type Pokemon, but we only have a Psychic-type fast food and a Psychic and Ghost-type charge move. Ghost types are not going to be doing too much to this Fighting-type Pokemon, this specific one at least, because it's a Dark-type as well, and Psychic going to do nothing against the Dark typing. So Scrafty is a little bit of an awkward Pokemon for our entire team. I am going to go for a Shadow Ball here on CMP. I can outpace him before the bait plus the nuke. Let's see what our opponent is going to do. Shadow Ball does end up drawing that shield there, and now I think I can no-shoulder Mr. Mime, knowing that it has done at least enough work to put against the Scrafty where backline's not going to be in as bad of a spot. Actually, they ended up baiting us with another Thunder Punch here. I get a full Sidewave down. Okay, Mr. Mime, hold on. This is actually not as bad of a matchup as I thought it would be. They come in with a Slowbro. We have a Shadow Ball ready to go against this. This should one-shot if they end up letting it go, or it will just draw the final shield. Now we can safely swap into our Ariados, or our Alomomola rather, be met by an Ariados, and try to land a Psychic against this Ariados, and try to potentially one-shot them if they don't lunge debuff us. In comes a charge move. It's going to be a Trailblaze. It is super effective and it will raise their attack stat, but because we have not been debuffed here, I think a Psychic is going to come very close to knocking out this Ariados. It does come through, not quite enough to one-shot, but we can Waterfall them down after the fact, and we have a shield advantage and a Miltank that can easily win this game. Our opponent is staying in this matchup, though. There's a chance that they have a huge nuke on this Pokemon. Could be a Focus Blast. Potentially, they might want to win the game by trying to surprise our final Pokemon, and if that is the case, my win condition is to shield up. Just make sure that they don't one-shot us here. I doubt they have it, but just in case they do, that is exactly why we shield. They did have Focus Blast. That would have easily one-shot us. Very happy I was able to close out that endgame. Alright, next matchup here, Mr. Mime up against a Lickilicky. We've seen this matchup before. Not exactly the worst matchup in the game, but it definitely can be a little bit awkward depending on what they throw and what moveset they have. I can outpace them, though, always to a Psychic before either an Earthquake or a Shadow Ball is going to be reached, which means I can make them either shield or take a decent chunk of damage against this Lickilicky. Psychic does end up landing. Honestly, Psychic is such a sad move. Metachamp ended up getting it nerfed a couple years ago. I hope they end up reverting that nerf at some point. They go for an Earthquake against us, does a massive amount of damage, and they try to snipe us down with a Slowbro, but we see that coming a mile away. We swap into our Miltank, and we're going to try our best to neutralize this Pokemon. Thunderbolt is going to be a bit more efficient than Body Slam, so we're going to throw that. Maybe we can put them to a Body Slam range. After this, Lickilicky would have been a much better normal type to have into Slowbro, because we could have had either Shadow Ball or Earthquake, but Miltank is a bit more better at coveraging the Water-type Pokemon in the backline, just in case that's why you might see them. That's why Miltank is better at some points, but in this individual matchup, not quite as well. Alright, Body Slam coming through. Our opponent does opt to let that go. There's a chance I can survive a Brutal Swing here, but it's going to be close whether or not we can, or whether we could even roll out down. They actually go for a Surf, so that does knock us out. And the final Pokemon, unfortunately for us, is going to be a Skeletor. So they hard swapped it in. Our Alomomola at this point can just shield once, farm all the way down, and this should be game over. Shield up the attack. It could be a bait, but it doesn't really matter at this point. We have so much HP on our Alomomola. These Waterfalls doing way too much damage. They don't even get a second charge attack. We get the full Waterfall down. Alomomola able to likely close out this backline. GG's to them. Next matchup, Mr. Mime up against the Talonflame. Not exactly the best lead, but we do have two Pokemon in the backline that are pretty good against this. We have our Alomomola, which can obviously go for Waterfall damage. We have our Miltank as well, which can go for Thunderbolt and roll out against them if we need to. We end up baiting out a Scrafty, actually, with our Alomomola, which is good for us, I guess. But the worst thing about this is that this Pokemon does have access to Thunder Punch, potentially. They end up doing a charge move, but it's actually going to be foul play, so likely that means their second charge move is unfortunately going to be Power Punch, which could be a little bit annoying if they start ramping up. In comes a Psychic. Our opponent does opt to shield it up here, which is exactly what we needed to see. I don't reach a Hydro Pump here, but I can reach a second Psychic, which should either draw the second shield here if they're not counting, or do at least a little bit of chip damage to this Scrafty. Yeah, they do actually know their counts here pretty well. I ended up doing almost nothing with that charge move, but at this point I can shield up the foul play, go for a farm down here. A power-up punch bait would be crazy. I would not expect it in a million years, and that is exactly why it ends up happening. They get the shield with the power-up punch. Now I'm going to have to shield the foul play because it's at +1. I guess I should have just no-shielded everything this game, but we do get a farm down here, which might be useful, I guess. We'll have to see if Mr. Mime has play into the backline. We end up seeing that Talonflame coming back in. They have a charge move right now. Our opponent likely going to end up going for a fly against us here, or potentially a Brave Bird against our Miltank. I'm going to swap out, save our Mr. Mime just in case we need it. I thought it'd be a second fighter. It technically is, but this is not the fighter I thought it might be. I was hoping that the second fighter would be a Pokemon like Medicham with Psycho Cut. If that was the case, it'd be a little bit easier to take down, but it is going to be a superpower Beware. Because of that, this Thunderbolt is going to be able to do a lot of damage, but it still won't be able to one-shot. I'll need to expend all of my energy here. Shadow Claw is doing almost nothing, but they're almost at their second superpower, so I have to throw this charge attack now and try to reach a Body Slam against this Talonflame. Body Slam does end up knocking out that Beware, but they get the Incinerate down. They have a charge move almost ready to go. No way Mr. Mime can close that one out. Next game here, luckily a good lead here for Mr. Mime. First really good lead of the day, a Medicham, one of the best leads we could possibly see, and they end up coming in with an Alomomola. This Pokemon obviously does have access to Hydro Pump, which would do a lot of damage to us, but I know Thunderbolt as well is super effective. This is where Miltank really comes in handy over a Pokemon like Lickilicky. Thunderbolt able to two-shot this Pokemon very easily. Alomomola is one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the meta, so it's always happy, or it always makes me happy rather, to have a good counter to this. In comes a charge move. I'm going to no-shield. It's a Psychic Bait. A Hydro Pump might have knocked us out there, but because it's not like Mr. Mime is the best answer into the world to things down shields, I didn't want to shield that up, and because we also called the bait, now we can overfarm with our Miltank here, go for a Body Slam on CMP, and get an energy lead with our backline. I know this doesn't knock out, they probably know this is not a Thunderbolt, they do end up no-shielding it here, but that's fine. I have an energy lead on my Mr. Mime, a shield advantage as well, and maybe even an energy lead on Alomomola, depending on what I want to farm this Pokemon down with. I know I could get a couple more waterfalls with our Alomomola, it's just what energy do I think is going to be more important in this game? I think Mr. Mime energy might just be the way to go. In the backline, going to be a Crocodile, not what I wanted to see. Keeping Switch would have just won us this game on the spot, especially because this is a counter Medicham. I think that we still have play. I know that Mr. Mime doesn't have any sort of fast move or charge move pressure into that Crocodile, but it is a pretty squishy Pokemon. Oh, Power Punch, that's going to make things really awkward as well. Power Punch is going to be able to be spammed out very quickly, and despite having two shields, now their counters are going to do quite a bit of damage to us. Psychic is going to come through, draw a shield from them, and at this point, I just have to hope that somehow Mr. Mime can close out this game. I'm going to shield up this time. I'm hoping for a Psychic or a Dynamic Punch. Our opponent does not go for another Power-Up Punch bait, which is fantastic for us, but this Psychic might not be enough to knock them out. With that said, I can swap out now to our Mr. Mime. Mr. Mime is not weak to Mud Slap, so I'm not going to get slapped down here before I can get to two charge moves. Let's see if our opponent knows that and how they want to play this out. Shadow Ball going to come through. It does over half of this Crocodile's HP, despite being resisted damage. We are almost at the next one, but they throw right before I get it. It has to be a Crunch, though. That's going to be a lot of energy. They have to come out of this matchup with another Brick Break or Crunch if they want to be able to knock out my Alomomola before I get two more Waterfalls. We can Waterfall down the Crocodile, and in comes a Medicham, but they reach a charge move. Hopefully, this is just a Power-Up Punch. If this is a Psychic, we end up losing this game, but a Pup is not going to be enough. Although Alomomola just a little bit too bulky, we're able to barely close out that matchup there. GG's to our opponent. Next matchup, a Talonflame in the lead. A very awkward lead matchup, but our backline, as we have talked about, does have quite a bit of play into it, so we'll have to see how we can play this one out. Sidewave is going to chip them down quite a bit. This time I'm playing it out a little bit differently, where I'm going to try to get some sort of a shield advantage going into my backline, because maybe Mr. Mime can at least put in some work into this Pokemon. We actually get a defense drop here, which is pretty nice with our Psychic, and we catch a charge move with our Alomomola. This is fantastic for us right now. Flame Charge is actually going to be thrown, so it's an even better catch than I was even expecting. Our opponent staying in for just a second longer as well. We're going to shield up a boosted charge move, likely going to be a Fly coming through right now. Fly is going to end up getting thrown. We can survive that because of the shield, and now, what the heck? I thought that was a Beware. No, that's a Stuffle, a Pokemon that obviously is a very spicy pick in the meta, but I looked it up after the fact. It's actually slightly bulkier than Beware, so maybe it's not actually that bad of a pick. It does have access to Tackle as its fast move, which is adding up over time. I think at this point they have to superpower us to knock us out, but if they can Stomp and farm us down, this could be kind of bad. Stomp does end up coming through. Can I reach the Psychic here? Unfortunately, just barely we cannot, which means this thing has so much energy, and I have to imagine, if there is a Stuffle here, that's gotta mean there's a Beware as their final Pokemon, right? If that's not the case, I don't know what to think anymore, so I'm going to have to try to invest in our Mr. Mime. Unfortunately, though, they get to another charge move here. I just have to no-shield this, try to Sidewave down, and get a Psychic against a Beware, but these Shadow Claws adding up a little bit too quickly. I don't think we have enough HP in the tank to Sidewave down that Stuffle, and then also knock out the Talonflame and this Beware. Mr. Mime had a little bit too much work to do this game. We get tackled down and unfortunately losing to the double fighting and normal type team. Next matchup, a Lickilicky up against our Mr. Mime. We've seen this lead a couple times today. We're going to play it out as best as we can. Try to use our Mr. Mime, at least in a neutral scenario, to not hard lose a matchup here. Mr. Mime is not the best at winning matchups, but it's also not terrible at just kind of soft losing, and that is what I'm going to play around with this game. I try to catch a Shadow Ball. They never seem to throw it there, unfortunately, but good for us. They end up coming with a Slowbro rather than a hard answer like a Medicham or a Scrafty, which means that these Thunderbolts and these Body Slams are going to start tripping down the Slowbro quite a bit. In comes the Thunderbolt. They do opt to let it go, which means now they're in range where Rollouts plus Body Slam might knock this Pokemon out. This is not enough energy for a Focus Blast. Our opponent throwing a Sludge Bomb, though. Massive respect to them. Sludge Bomb is the way. If you're running Slowbro, please run Sludge Bomb. It's so much better than Surf or Scald. I swear. I've been running it myself. I think it's just so much better in these neutral matchups. But that said, they still lose that matchup because they're a down energy Slowbro into a Miltank. But I swear it's a good Pokemon to have normally. In comes a Skeletor to farm us down. Roll out, not able to do enough damage and generate enough energy to reach a Thunderbolt before we get that farm down there. But that's fine. We have a Alomomola here in the back line. All we need to do is tap our screens, make sure that we can knock everything out with fast moves. Here we catch a charge move actually with our Mr. Mime, which should put us in a good spot. If this is a Shadow Ball, it basically one-shots us, and that is exactly what's going to happen. With that said, Waterfall is still going to do quite a bit of damage. We get a one-turn lag here, meaning that we get a deny on a Waterfall, which might mean that this Lickilicky can get to another charge move after the fact. If they do, if it's a Shadow Ball, we might lose this game, but I know mathematically that is impossible for this to be enough energy for a Shadow Ball. That's just going to be a Body Slam. Save my final shield for a potential Shadow Ball from this Skeletor, and we should be able to tap our screen and knock out this Skeletor with 2 shields remaining, just with fast move pressure. Our opponent here not having any moves to shield at the end, just going for fast moves. Skeletor goes down to Alomomola thanks to the amount of bulk that Pokemon has. All right, next game here, another Talonflame on the lead. I guess tomorrow maybe I'm going to have to hard counter these Pokemon because I am seeing so many of these after using Bug Trio and Mr. Mime. It gets so annoying to see Pokemon like this. I might just need to put in a Alomomola or a Miltank in the lead so I can just deal with Talonflame a lot easier. With that said, we're going to go for the Psychic, try to get a shield, and then make a catch on a charge move. Last time we caught a Flame Charge, is this going to be a Fly or a Flame Charge or a Brave Bird? Luckily, just a Fly here, no Brave Bird coming through, but they do overfarm, so they store a Fly in the backline, and then they come in with a Scrafty. This Pokemon is by no means a hard answer to our Alomomola, which means that we should be in a good spot to go for a Hydro Pump, draw that second shield, and hope at this endgame here that our Mr. Mime should be enough to win us this matchup. I wouldn't be surprised with some sort of a double fighter team, but our opponent going for just a 2-shield farm down, I guess, against our Alomomola. That's kind of a crazy play. I am expecting another fighter in the back, so I'm going to no-shield this move, come in with our Miltank, just try to absorb all of the energy that we can, trip them down with Body Slams and rollouts, and then maybe invest in a 2-shield Mr. Mime sweep. I know that's a bold play, but there's a good chance it could work out. Foul Play ends up coming through, but they're not at another move yet because Scrafty is a little slow running the counter fast move. In comes Body Slam. It should be enough to put them into a Sidewave down range, and they swap out. Unfortunately, that is not a second fighter. That is an Alomomola, a Pokemon with way too much fast move pressure, even for a 2-shield Mr. Mime to take down. Next matchup, a Miltank in the lead, a very neutral lead matchup here. We've seen the Lickilicky lead. This is a very similar matchup to that, although they can't one-shot us potentially with a move like a Shadow Ball or even Earthquake. They only have Thunderbolt as their coverage move, which means Mr. Mime is not going to be threatened to shield quite as early. We actually draw a shield with that Psychic, which is fantastic for us to see. Sidewaves are adding up against Miltank as well. Our opponent likely going to go for a Body Slam because 2 Body Slams should be enough to knock us out over time, and they know that they're going to go for the 2 cheap moves. At this point, though, I know I can CMP on the second Psychic here, meaning that if they do opt to get a little bit greedy and try to throw the charge move right before my next Psychic, I can actually either get a knockout here, potentially get them very low if they opt to no-shield this move, or draw that second Protect shield. Our opponent is going to opt to let it go. Psychic, though, such a weak move, unfortunately not quite enough to knock out Miltank, but I'm fine with this. At this point, now we've taken out one of the best answers to Alomomola in this meta. We're going to try to go for a rollout down, but unfortunately our opponent does end up swapping out to a Waterfall Miltank, or not Miltank, Milotic. Our Miltank going to try to go for Thunderbolts against this Pokemon. It will be super effective, but our opponent might shield this up. They do opt to shield, and the thing is, if you're using a Milotic with Waterfall, I have to imagine this is like some sort of a hard AVB team with Alomomola as the final Pokemon. If that is the case, then I want to use my Miltank to the best of its ability, go for a Thunderbolt here, try to knock out this Milotic, and then potentially catch a move if they don't get knocked out by this. Yeah, unfortunately, they do survive that with 1 HP. I'm going to try our best here to catch a Surf, which we do end up doing, and we save a bit of energy on our Miltank, which we might be able to use to Thunderbolt the final Pokemon, which is going to obviously be that Alomomola. This is going to be an interesting game. They can catch a charge move, and they might try to catch our Psychic. They might try to save their catch for our Miltank in the backline. Let's see what our opponent's going to do. We're going to go for a Psychic against them here. Psychic is not going to do too much damage, but it will start to bring them down over time. Our opponent doesn't have any shields left, no debuff unfortunately for us with that Psychic, but after the next one here, they're going to be in range, well within range, that is, where Thunderbolt could knock them out. Maybe even a Body Slam might be enough. In comes a Psychic here. Our opponent is almost at the next one. I think one or two more waterfalls will get them to that next charge move, which means Miltank is going to have to come in soon and try to close out this end game. We actually get the defense drop there, which means they are definitely in body slam range, but I don't know exactly how our opponent is going to play this game out. They might try to instantly catch, they might try to overfarm and catch when we're going to throw. Let's see what's going to happen. Psychic does end up knocking us out here. I'm going to come in Miltank. We were not even at the charge move yet. Our opponent thought that I was, which means we can easily just farm them down, go for this Thunderbolt, knock out this Alomomola, and win the game with our Miltank in the back line. Thunderbolt more than enough. Honestly, a Body Slam definitely would have knocked them out there, but we're able to close out that end game. Mr. Mime in this next game up against an Alomomola, another one of these bulky Pokemon, but honestly, I don't think this matchup is all that bad for Mr. Mime. As crazy as that is to say, I know I can outpace him to 2 charge moves before they can reach a Hydro Pump, which means maybe the Zero Shield matchup are going to be in favor of Mr. Mime. Sidewaves and Shadow Balls are adding up. They're already below half HP, which is helpful for us right now, but I know that this is only a Psychic, but it's still going to do a massive amount of damage to us. These Waterfalls as well have put us almost at the red already. We are able to survive that and one more charge move here, which means that we are able to reach this Psychic, knock out this Alomomola, or draw a shield from this Pokemon. They opt to let it go. Mr. Mime actually winning the Zero Shield matchup against something that is a first. That is fantastic to see, though. We're able to now come in Miltank up against this Ariados, and our opponent, for some reason, staying in this matchup. Likely going to be a lunge coming through. Our opponent is going to try to start debuffing us, make it so our Miltank is not going to be able to knock them out just with 1 or 2 body slams here, plus this rollout damage. And comes a body slam number 1. We're getting as much energy as we can just in case they swap out, and we're always watching for a potential catch. Body slam not enough to 2-shot from this range, so no reason to throw my energy just yet. In comes yet another lunge, and I think at this point I will need a Thunderbolt if I want to knock out. We're at -2 attack here. Our rollouts, even though they're super effective, not doing too much damage to them. I'm going to go for the guaranteed raw damage, go for the Thunderbolt. If my opponent wants to shield, they can be my guest, but they opt to let it go. We get a full rollout down. What is the final Pokemon going to be? That is the best Pokemon we could possibly have. Imagine in the backline, Crocalor has nothing against a 2-shield Alomomola. Alright, next game, Mr. Mime up against a Shadow Scizor. This is one of the worst leads we could see here, but our Miltank on the safe swap is going to try its best once again to knock out this Pokemon if they happen to stay in this matchup. In comes a charge move. It could be a Night Slash, it could be an Scizor, depending on what moveset this opponent is running. They actually go for a Night Slash against us, and they're staying in for just a second, which means I get the chance to go for a Body Slam bait. They know this could be a Thunderbolt. Shadow Scizor is very squishy. Even if they no-shield a Body Slam, it's still going to do a lot of damage to them. They opt to stay in for just a second, and they try to catch a move on their Miltank. With that said, I still have to throw energy against them, so I'm going to go for a Thunderbolt of my own, see if I can start chipping down this Pokemon, and see if there's any chance to win this game, potentially with Alomomola in the backline. They're overfarming so much energy. They know that I'm in Body Slam range, and they're not quite in the range of any charge moves of mine knocking them out, but I'm going to swap into our Mr. Mime, knowing it's very useless this game. That is still a Shadow Scizor in the backline, so if I can just sack this Pokemon here, use it as a way to sponge energy, I think that's going to be the best case scenario. Comes yet another charge move from this Miltank. If it's a Thunderbolt, it knocks us out. Body Slam not quite enough here, so we're able to survive the move and maybe even reach a charge attack here. They come in with Shadow Scizor. I should have gone for the Shadow Ball. I didn't quite react in time, but I still reach a Psychic, which is going to do a massive amount of damage, and actually still gets a shield here, so I guess that was a good play. Our opponent is now switch locked in Shadow Scizor. I'm just going to shield farm him all the way down, see what our Alomomola can do in the back. Scizor is going to be thrown, so that means no Trailblaze. Trailblaze would have been able to ramp up their attack stat. Now I'm thinking maybe I just no-shield this attack. Maybe they Night Slash bait us here too. If this is an Scizor, though, it's going to do quite a bit of damage. Not quite as much as they could have done, though, with a super effective Grass-type move. We get that full farm down. What is their final Pokemon going to be? Unfortunately for us, it's an Alomomola. I don't think I can reach a Thunderbolt here. If I could, there might be a chance, but I only get a Body Slam, and I'd be forced to throw it against this Miltank anyway. So, very good catch by our opponent. But now, the only way there might even be a sliver of a chance is if I get a Psychic debuff. Maybe after a Psychic debuff, I can knock them out with a Hydro Pump after the fact. But even then, I think this game is a lost cause. Psychic comes through, no debuff. We're going to lose that game, unfortunately. All right, next matchup here, going to see Mr. Mime up against an Alomomola. We've seen in the past, this is not the worst seed matchup in the world. We end up winning the Zero Shield as long as this is not like an attack-weighted Alomomola. If there's some sort of waterfall breakpoint that I don't know about, that could be kind of bad for us. With that said, we are able to reach the Shadow Ball, try to get some chip damage against one of the bulkiest Pokemon in the entire meta, and see how our opponent wants to play this matchup out. In comes a charge move here. Once again, just going to be a Psychic. I'm hoping I can survive this, plus one more waterfall to reach a charge move against this Alomomola. They end up coming in with a Slowbro here, a very, very late reaction by me. I get Poison Jab down before I can even swap out, which means now that they have energy on Alomomola, they have energy on the Slowbro, and our Miltank is not even a hard answer to this Pokemon. I'm going to no-shield, hoping for no Sludge Bomb. Let's see what move they're going to end up throwing. It is a Sludge Bomb. People are starting to catch on. That is the moveset to run. It is my favorite moveset on Slowbro in this meta. I do understand why you'd want Surf for like Talonflame potentially, but I mean, even Brutal Swing and Sludge Bomb do enough damage in a lot of those matchups where it's just so nice in these neutral scenarios to have that attack. With that said, I am going to try our best to take out the Sludge Bomb Slowbro just with a charge move spam, see how our opponent wants to play this out, and catch a charge move on Alomomola. At this point, this is very likely just a Brutal Swing. Gonna do very little damage to us here. We can farm them all the way down, and we see their final Pokemon is a Beware. This Pokemon is very squishy, though. There's a chance, as long as we don't get superpowered, that we can win this game. I'm gonna No Shield. I don't expect them to have debuffed their defense stat this early on, so if I go for a No Shield on a Stomp, there's a chance I can Waterfall this Pokemon all the way down. They get to another Charge Move already, though. If they get to 2 more, then our Alomomola is gonna go down, but I think this endgame is gonna get kind of tricky depending on how they play this out. Psychic is gonna be able to draw a shield, maybe even get a defense drop there, but it is a very rare chance to happen. Psychic comes through. Our opponent's defense actually gets dropped, which is exactly what we need to see. Now this is so much easier to Waterfall down. This might even be in range where I could roll out down later on if I need to. Our opponent throws the Stomp once again, and they come in with their own Alomomola. This is such an awkward endgame. I know this Pokemon is going to be able to farm us down before we can farm them down, especially if they end up shielding the Psychic, and now Miltank is going to have to try its best to win this backline matchup. I can't take any extra Waterfalls here. I need to keep some HP. If they come in Beware, though, I think we might have a chance to win this game. Or no, if they come in Slowbro, actually, and I can knock them out with a Body Slam, that's probably the best case scenario, because they are kind of close to another Brutal Swing, so we can knock them out here. I don't know if they can Shadow Claw us all the way down before I can reach a Charge Move. If they can't, then I'm just going to win this game with straight rollout damage against the Beware. Oh my goodness, GG's to our opponent there. Fantastic game. Next matchup, Blue Rantis up against our Mr. Mime. That's actually a bit of a team breaker. That's one of the worst Pokemon we could see. I know Fury Cutter is not super effective, but it's doing quite a bit of fast food pressure, and they reach these Leaf Blades way too quickly. I think the only matchup that Mr. Mime's going to have any sort of play into is going to be the Zero Shield. So I'm going to No Shield this, try to throw a Shadow Ball up against them, but they got to catch on their Talonflame. This is looking so bad. Honestly, if I would have called this catch and I wouldn't have thrown the Shadow Ball, I could have saved this energy. I could have got a huge farm down with our Alomomola. Maybe we could have still had a chance this game, but our opponent able to make such a fantastic catch, sniping down our Mr. Mime and getting a charge move off as well with their Brave Bird. This is looking so bad for us, but there could still be a chance depending on what that third Pokemon is going to be, but their Lurantis still has a lot of health, a lot of energy. This is going to be such a hard game to win, especially because they have access to Superpower, a move which would basically one-shot our Miltank if they happen to throw it. We have to try to call the move correctly here. I'm going to go for a Shield on a Leaf Blade. Our opponent just playing us right now. We go for a Body Slam, and they catch once again with a Skeletor. That is terrible for us to see. Body Slam going to do nothing to this Pokemon. Our opponent just dancing around us way too much right now. Rollout is super effective, but Thunderbolt is not. If I had a Lickilicky, we could probably threaten a shield here, but our opponent likely is going to no-shield this, reach a charge move, and this endgame is looking so bad for us right now. I can't shield this up. I know a Superpower or Leaf Blade is going to do more damage, but I don't even know if I can roll out this down before we get incinerated down here, because Miltank does not have stab rollout damage. They throw yet another charge move. I can't shield this. I have to shield this, but I can't. This is just so bad at this point. They end up shadow balling us, and not much I could do there. Our opponent just dancing around us so incredibly well. That was our last game of the night as well. Finishing off the day with an 0-5, unfortunately. Sometimes it happens, though. This team, believe it or not, Mr. Mime is not that good. I tried my best to make this Pokemon work. I think we went 8 wins and 17 losses overall today. It wasn't the best day in the Go Battle League. I wasn't expecting it to be, though. Mr. Mime needs a lot of help if it ever wants to be in the meta. It needs a cheaper charge move for sure, maybe even a better coverage move. It's just kind of underwhelming with the way that it is right now. Alright, well, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you want to see more content like this in the future, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. Thank you again for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.